Alright everybody, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're here reacting and having a discussion about Choy's video talking about a DBD currency system explained in 5 minutes. Ironically enough, the video is actually 14 minutes, so it's almost double, if not triple, the amount that was supposed to be in the title. But anyway, with that being said, I'm curious to see what it's about. A DBD currency system does sound a lot like other games, like RPGs and things like that. I know there's probably like one recent example I can come up with from memory that had something similar to this, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I'm curious to see if you can think of any games that have any systems that include a point system for their builds. Sound off in the comments, because I completely forgot of any examples. So let's get into it.
I'm going to explain the DBD currency balance system and how it would function in Dead by Daylight. I have other videos on it, but this one is straight to the point, detailing how it would exactly work with a Q&A section at the end of the video to address the most common questions and arguments against it. Quick synopsis: the currency system is inspired by Black Ops' Pick 10 system, and it essentially and very
Yeah, okay, now he answered exactly what I was thinking. I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot that it was Black Ops 2, I think, that I remember had a point system. So that's interesting. I never thought of that.
very simply assigns a value to everything in the game that can be applied to a build loadout. So for example, an iridescent add-on will always cost 10 points regardless of which specific iridescent add-on it is, and it's set up this way for practicality. There's too many add-ons to realistically assign each of them an individual value, and there isn't really a necessary reason to do it. It's important to keep in mind this currency system is intended to make DBD significantly easier for the developers to manage, so everything is designed around that principle. So now let's move on to build allowances and the importance.
Off the bat though, I do think that it might add too much restriction for builds, and it might cut down on a lot of build variety as well, especially because of the fact that killer perks already don't have a lot of synergies, already are not very strong on their own, and require you to combine multiple perks to get value from it. Arguably though, it probably would make survivor builds a little bit more balanced, because they can sort of cut down on some of the sort of jack of all trades, like Swiss Army knife kind of feel when it comes down to going against a survivor team. But I also think it would depend on the point system and like obviously specifics that I'm not aware of yet. But it, like, just off the bat, it does sound a little bit far-fetched, I would say. So I'm curious to see how that would go. A couple of things that I'm really thinking about is what perks are going to be assigned what kind of point system. Like, how many points do you get per build? How do you scale the perks to be, you know, given a certain point value? Like, how would you go about doing that and having that framework, and how would that apply to future perks that get added into the game? Right, stuff like that. That's what I'm immediately thinking of.
Of acknowledging inherent strength within the game. For the sake of this video, we're going to say that Nurse is the strongest killer in the game and Trapper is the weakest killer in the game. So if you take a look at their builds, you'll see that Nurse has 50 points to spend and Trapper has 100. Now for a quick explanation of why we're doing this, let's look at the meta perk Pop Goes the Weasel. When this perk is used by Nurse and Trapper, Nurse is going to get significantly more value out of it than Trapper because of the inherent strength of her power in comparison to Trapper's, even if both are being played perfectly. This leads to a situation where you see this: the developers bending themselves into a pretzel trying to balance a single perk with seemingly no solution. However, with build allowances, Pop Goes the Weasel will now cost much more for Nurse than it will for Trapper, effectively acting as a tether that grabs the most powerful things in the game and the weakest things in the game and pulls them closer together, making everything much easier to balance and design around as well. To clarify,
well, the one thing that may cause a little bit of, it may cause a little conflict would be sort of how do we define which killers are going to get what ranking, right? And I think that's really up to the developers, and I think what it might do is end up forcing the devs to actually have to go into the game and take into account which characters are actually strong and which ones aren't, which like, I don't know if we want to have that happen, to be honest, because the devs already have a lot on their plate as it is, and then if we're gonna start adding on the fact that they're gonna have to start considering out the gate, hey, this killer is going to be strong, so we need to start making this killer start off with this amount of points. So then it's like, how do we, like, I feel like that's going to restrict a lot of the development, because of the fact that they need to consider, hey, this new killer is coming into the game, how many points are they gonna have? So it seems almost pointless to overcomplicate it in that sense, because just because we have existing killers that are weak doesn't necessarily mean that the new killer is going to also be weak or strong, and then it has to also mean that the devs have to sit there and decide if the killer is going to be strong off the bat. But ultimately, like, we don't know what's going through their minds or what they have in development, so it seems like it's just going to cut down on a lot of creativity on their end as well. And then that also applies to perks. So if they add new perks, they're gonna have to start coming up with not only do they have to already think of game balancing, but they have to think about how it scales into a point system as well. I don't think they would want to do that. I'm just saying, I don't think they would want to do that.
Pop in this example will cost 25 points for both Nurse and Trapper, but Trapper has a larger build allowance. This pushes everything in the game to what I like to refer to as the Goldilocks zone of balance, right in that perfect sweet spot where things are not too strong or too weak. Now, the developers are attempting to do this themselves manually. The latest example is the removal of the ability to stack haste or hinder effects, which is a great example of how manual balance also leads to milquetoast or bland design choices, overall making the game less interesting. So for instance, the developers could hypothetically manually nerf Nurse and buff Trapper to push them into this Goldilocks zone, but again, that will lead to much less interesting versions of both characters. It will sacrifice their identity in sake of pursuing that perfect balance. With the currency system, both characters get to keep their unique identity, and it does not box the developers into that tight design bubble. Now onto the bigger point of contention: how does this affect the Survivor role? Survivor has solo queue, duos, trios, and 4-man swifts. Each of these, again, have different inherent strengths that need to be addressed. So I use a very simple formula to calculate their build allowances. Solo queue, being the weakest, gets 100 points like Trapper, duo gets 90 points, trios get 80 points, and a 4-man swift gets 70 points.
I do like this idea for Survivor side, if they want to make it specifically for Survivor and make the point system work that way. That's fine, I think, because like I've said before, you know, Survivor is very capable, especially with the fact that you can team up with creating a build creating a team composition with all different roles and builds. And even with those roles, you can still fill other slots. You can still fill up and do other things. And me personally, I wouldn't have gone this heavy-handed with it, where we're coming up with the whole convoluted point system. Me personally, I would have opted to try to focus on very specific perks and trying to raise up bad ones and kind of lower down some of the good ones, and kind of have it sort of, you know, have a pros and cons to each perk, and kind of make people have to make good decisions and have to sort of add a little more depth to the build creation. Now this obviously does that. I do like the idea that if you're in a swift, it does raise it, it does bring it down, so you're actually it's going to overall spread around more balance in a sense, because obviously within teams they already have access to every single perk and communication, and also 4 chances of different offerings, so they already are at the peak of strength. So by bringing it down with the point system like this, for each person only have 70 points, means that they'll on average be a lot weaker than they would be in the current patch of the game. So that makes sense to me. I do like that fact. That is good. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of potential for builds in a 4-man squad. Like there's a lot. There's also communication, and if people, which there are a lot of dedicated players that want to win games, they're going to all come together into teams, and they can do that. So if that's what they're trying to do, they're fully capable of doing that. And we can also see that in the competitive scene, they come together. Four of the like strongest players on that played at Survivor come together, all focus out gens. One person's getting chased, and 9 times out of 10 we're seeing either a lot of Survivor wins, and they have to base it off hooks and stuff like that. And also, the killers don't tend to get 4Ks or 3Ks even. They sometimes only get 1 kill or just a couple of hooks. Which goes to show that even at the highest level, you could say, right? Like the people that have the most experience with the game, within the rule sets obviously that they create, they still are able to shine right through in most cases, because they have teamwork, they have communication, they are able to counter. And you hear it a lot, right? The argument always goes, oh, the game is Survivor sided or the game is killer sided, but ultimately it's depending on the range of the level determines where the strengths lie. But at the highest level, when people are both experienced and in a team, automatically it goes straight to them. That's just how it works. So I like the idea so far.
And to be clear, each survivor is getting their own personal build. These points are not shared, they're just sacrificing 10 points per additional Swift member. That's it. Currently, Behavior is significantly struggling with the problem of balancing the game between solo queue and a 4-man Swift. They're designing killers that are way too strong for solo queue in my opinion, because of 4-man Swifts, but what ends up happening due to the Grand Canyon gap between solo queue and a 4-man Swift, these overtuned killers like the Ghoul, for example, end up obliterating solo queue, while sadly still not reaching the potential to compete with a perfectly optimized 4-man. Now if you look at this recent scoreboard from Outstarvo, where he played against a fully optimized 4-man Swift, not only in their builds but also in their gameplay as well, you'll see how too much advantage was simply stacked against him before the match even started.
I will say there is one thing that I will want to sort of add to this, right? There's a small caveat here, okay? Albeit, like, you know, because it like with matches it's a case-by-case basis, but like if you're going in with the premise that the team is on comms, working together, running the best possible builds, and as you can see here, the builds do consist of second chances, which are the strongest perks for Survivor, as we know. And it seems like they have Deliverance and Breakable. That's already 2 chances. Off the record. And also I think that's second win, so that's about 2 more second chances. And it seems like we have Dead Hard and Decisive, that's 2 more. And then we also have Flashbang and Background Player, so those can be combined for yet another second chance. So that is about, no, actually if we count the Firecracker with Background Player, that is over, let's count it right here. So we have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, right? And 9 if you consider the free health stay from the syringe. So that's about 9 second chances And that doesn't even account for the made for this, which is a free speed boost if they take the off the record hit. And then resilience also gives them arguably another second chance perk because they are much faster with vaulting, so mind games can be a little bit tricky, especially because their vault speed is much faster. That does actually mean that they sometimes are able to avoid taking a hit while injured, so that is another thing there. Oh, and adrenaline, that's another second chance, so that's about almost 10 chances just about. And keeping in mind here, you may not see it, but odds here has thrilling tremors, coup de grace, bamboozle, and he has the undone, I believe, the vault perk that gives you haste. And obviously you don't see it because I'm in front of it, but anyway, considering that the build is not very good, right? Like, keep in mind that this team it has the best possible perks, and don't forget the flashlight, right? So there's already another opportunity there for second chances. You also even have an offering that sends the hatch to the shack as well. So a lot, like, this whole map has been dedicated for second chance only, right? And we can see that. Odds here is completely defenseless against it, basically, because he is playing Freddy, which is very good. Freddy is quite good. He does have Z block on, and I don't know if that's unicorn block. I forget which one this is. I think this should be rupture range, I think. And then the Z block, I believe, is what gives you aura when you, like, I think it gives you aura when you, like, land your snares, I think. It's been a little bit of a minute since I played Freddy, so anyway, so the build is not great. Coop is fine, but thrilling is it only activates every 60 seconds, and then Bam is also very good. But then Undone is also not the best currently. Obviously, if they make it, like, they buff it, make it 10% haste, much better. At the current patch, no. So odds over here is unprepared for this, right? And keep in mind, this is when we talk about teams going again, and mind you, he got a tie, which is a shock, which means that Oz is doing pretty well, considering the fact. Chances are they were fully utilizing all the second chances, fully utilizing. If they were more average, like, builds, like, where I didn't have everything set up in the way that it is, most likely would have been at least a 3. But because they have all of these options, it does cut down a lot of the opportunity to get 3 or 4. But despite that, I gotta say, Odds was doing okay. I would say arguably did pretty well, considering the mere fact that he did not have the best perks in the game to go against the best perks in the game. Not terrible. But this right here is an example of what we're talking about when we ever bring up the whole 4-man survivor squad, like the potential strength that it can be is a good example is right here, because they can bring all second chance perks. They can bring opportunities here for each other, so that, and depending on the map as well, can also add to that as well, right? Because they're rocking deliverance, which means if you hook somebody else and then hooked him, say you're, like, playing fairly, he'll just hop off the hook, and then now no one has to save him. That's insane, right? Unbreakable. Say you were like, oh crap, I gotta down somebody for pressure. Oh, he gets up by himself. Like, you know, same thing with, like, if you want to, like, go after Ada for any reason and you want to get her out of the game, oh, off the record and a speed boost and also free vault speed, and you're like, okay, well, let me go after Ace then. Oh, guess what? He has Dead Hard and Decisive. Oh, wow. And don't forget, if you go after anyone else, flashbang and background player. And the firecracker too, so that's an extra opportunity. So, and then another person with flashbang and background and vigils to recharge the background player, so they're dedicated to going for the blinds. Like, this is what we mean when we're talking about 4-man teams that are strong. Like, this is what we're looking at, teams like this. And another point I want to make here is this flashlight, this anniversary flashlight, has 2 batteries. So they're bringing 2 batteries with this flashlight to go for as many blinds as humanly possible. Like this team is dedicated to winning the match. So this is an example of what we're talking about, and having a point system apply to this, or having nerfs to certain things, could potentially be a good idea. So let's see what else what else Choy has to say.
The game was quite literally rigged from the start. So here you could see how the currency system would have prohibited these builds from existing, requiring more skill in gameplay and less reliance on pure advantage.
Oh, okay. So he says the total here is 102 points, but with the system we take off 32 points, meaning that we potentially, if they want to use this build, they would have to either remove one of their second chances, which I would argue that Unbreakable could be a little bit higher than 20, maybe 25. But anyway, you can basically, what would occur is you either have to remove the toolbox and then remove Deliverance, or you would have to remove Unbreakable and then keep this, but then you would have to remove Hope or something like that. I'm seeing the point here. This is actually very, very true. Like, you won't have to deal with the insane build creation, and this is what I've been talking about with build composition, what I've been talking about with the sort of Swiss Army knife kind of feel with survivor builds, because you're able to come up with teams like this that have multiple players that are dedicated to making sure you cannot hook anyone, making sure that you literally are unable to apply any pressure. Because if you utilize any strategy at all, if you want to slug anybody, they have Unbreakable. If you want to like just try to pursue them off hook, you can't do that. They have a perk for that. You try to spread the hooks, doesn't matter, because if you down anybody, you're blinded. So like, you know what I mean? So you're just kind of like cooked in every way possible, which is ultimately what people have an issue with when they do play killer. And then this one says 88 out of 70, so minus 18 points, meaning that they would have to get rid of potentially the flashlight, or they would have to get rid of Made for This or Second Wind, right? Or yep, this one says 95, so then yeah, you would have to either get rid of Dead Hard or Decisive, meaning that it would actually be a lot better. No, I see this. Yeah, this would be much more balanced for sure. But the only problem is, how do you assign the values to these perks, right? That's kind of the problem.
Also, you'll notice that Otts with the currency system would have gained 32% extra blood points because he didn't use his entire build allowance, so players actually get rewarded for not min-maxing their builds.
Oh, he's pitching that you get more blood points for the builds. Interesting. Okay. I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see the vision. I'm starting to see the vision. These perks, the perks that he was using are not the greatest. Especially with cooldown, like Drilling Tremors, like having like a 60-second cooldown is insane for only like 10 seconds of blocking. Is actually diabolical and insane, but you know, it's fine.
This also helps new players who don't use perks or use weaker perks because they're getting built-in BP bonuses that they might not even be aware of. In addition, running a perk like No Mither will now actually count as a negative perk, meaning it will add additional allowance to a build that can be used to bring stronger perks or simply to farm extra blood points. So the system is actually rewarding players for not sweating. So now that I've explained the system, we're moving on to the Q&A portion of the video where I'll answer the most commonly asked questions or arguments about the currency system. Question 1. How will the developers know which point values to assign everything in the game, from killers to perks to add-ons? Can we trust them to do that? The answer is, first of all, behavior already has to do this. They have to know how strong or weak everything in the game is. The only difference is that currently when they want to nerf or buff something, they have to talk about it, come up with a solution, implement that solution manually, test it privately, test it it publicly and then bring it to the live version of the game, or possibly scrap everything they worked potentially months on because the community just didn't like it, which happens very often. Manually balancing everything in the game is very tricky because with so many variables in the game, balance becomes a Tetris board where one small change can have a huge ripple effect, changing the entire balance landscape. So when you compare that to assigning a point value that can be done in a day, it seems like the much more logical option.
Well, it depends. It depends. They already had to do that, and they do have to take a long process to actually do those things. But that's not in every case. A lot of the time we can, at least in my opinion, we can literally look at certain perks and just be like, hey, just lower the number, you know? Or add a downside. Like I was saying this about Deja Vu for a long time. I was saying that with Deja Vu, you literally are net positive the entire time, right? Because you're rocking 6% repair speed with no downside. You get free aura reading and nothing else. There's no, hey, you can repair faster, but you heal slower. Like, things like that would arguably be better, in my opinion, because then it would actually create roles within teams and lean into more team composition. Like, you should have something for that. Because honestly, killers actually have that, right? They need multiple perks to make one single thing shine. But on Survivor, you got the one perk that does the one thing, and then and you could just slap on something else, and then that does a bunch of stuff, and then you slap on something else, and that does a bunch of stuff too. And you can create a very balanced build compared to like Killer, where it's like, okay, I want to do vaulting, but I only get 15% on this, and I block it, so I'm like, okay, well, I need to run. I want to run something else that makes you vault more, like with more speed. Oh, you're gonna have to run this perk, but it only activates when they vault in front of you. Or oh, if you like another example, you know what? Dark Arrogance. You vault 25% faster, but you're stunned for 25% longer. Literally, like, and the only way to circumvent that is only putting on Enduring, and then it means it nerfs Enduring. Perfect example of a perk of what I'm talking about. But you don't see that on Survivor. You don't see a perk that says, oh, you get, like, you don't, like, the only perk I've seen that was on Botany Knowledge. Botany Knowledge says you heal others 50% faster or something like that, but you heal yourself, like, your self-care, I think it said, like, Medkit or something, like, runs out 20% faster or something like that. Like, why don't we have more perks for that? You know what I mean? Like, that to me would make a little bit more sense. You know, which I'm pitching a completely different system, and I guess you could say, but because it's a little bit more simple, I would say. You're just basically adding an effect to an already existing perk to kind of bring them down, you know, and try to make things a little bit more, you know, make you think a little bit more about how you use or place with certain things. But a point system, I guess, is also interesting as well. And of course they do this, and it does make sense. Like, that is a valid point where they do work on things for a long time, and then they end up just not being able to use it because nobody really wants to see it.
Worst, they make Decisive Strike cost 20 points instead of 25 points. Is that really so dramatic? They can always swap the value again later very easily if they need to, right? There isn't months of commitment to these changes with a...
Well, the thing is, though, like, sure, the point value can be changed, but we're also worrying about the perk effects, too. And arguably, I'd say that the currency system doesn't really solve the effects of those perks either. Now, I think there's two answers to this question, or conundrum, if you will. You can either A, right, you can sit here and sort of go through all the perks like I was saying, and just add effects, like add negatives to those things. Right? Like that's what I was thinking, right? You can add sort of positives and negatives to those perks. Or you can have the point system and then make something more expensive in the points. And then lower maybe some other perks or something like that. But I do think the effects are also important too. It does solve it to some degree though, because with if they're in a Swift and you have less points to work with per survivor, you could prevent some of those problems. So that it's not bad. It's not a bad idea.
A currency system. Now this segues into question 2. Isn't this just a band-aid fix for bad balance? Do you really think the currency system will magically fix everything and nothing will need to be manually changed in the future? Of course not. I hear this a lot.
Do people really just say that they think it's a, do you think it's a band-aid fix? Kind of condescending. But do you really think the currency system does anyone ever ask that? Do you really think the currency system will magically fix everything? Like nobody's saying all of that, but they're saying that it would add a little bit of something. You know, it does bring the balancing into a bit of question, you could say. I would say. And it does kind of make you think a little bit more about how to balance the game in a more simplistic way so that the devs have less to worry about, which is a good idea.
The currency system is not a band-aid fix. If you're searching for an analogy, it's much closer to a dishwasher. Imagine you walk into a room with thousands of dirty dishes and they're continuously piling up while you're trying to clean them all by hand. Well, the currency system is essentially a dishwasher. It reduces the amount of dirty dishes, or in reality balance problems, to a reasonable and manageable level. Whereas right now it's not a matter of bad balance, it's a problem of impossible balance. The currency system allows the devs to really focus on the truly problematic issues in the game because all the less important problems are in the dishwasher. It's all really about efficiency and time management. So when the strongest things and the weakest things are more tethered to that Goldilocks zone of balance, it takes a huge weight off of the devs and makes everything much more manageable. And it also lets them focus in and really dedicate on those important issues. Whereas right now they have a massive time management issue where they're just rushing through things and making more problems than they're solving. Question 3. Won't the currency system punish casual 4-man swifts that are just looking to have fun? No, this is actually a huge self-report and a red flag. If there's...
I agree with that as well, by the way, with Choy just said. Because saying that the currency system punishes casual 4-man swifts, like usually 4-man swifts are not playing casually. Like let's keep it a $1.50, okay? Like let's keep it 100%, and let's really be honest with ourselves. Like, have we ever really seen a 4-man just hanging out, having a good time, or are they usually trying to, you know, sabotage, anti-hook, like, you know, that kind of thing? Don't get hooked. Or flashbang squads. Like 9 times out of 10, that's usually what you're seeing. Map offering, Sabo's team, like, you know, like, what do you, like, nah. Like flashlight squad, like, no. They're not going, like, I mean, it's fun for them, you know what I'm saying? Like, which is cool, which is fine, I guess, but I wouldn't say that I wouldn't say that like that there's a bunch of those like that are just trying to just have fun, because their fun ultimately does rely on the killer having a bad time. You know, it's crazy, man.
It's a real casual 4-man swift that just wants to have fun, then the currency system will only help them achieve that, because the killers they're playing against are going to have much more manageable builds to deal with. Likewise, if this supposed...
That's true. Choy's right on that. Choy's right. Because as we saw earlier in the video, right, that's usually what you see a 4-man run. You're running either a bunch of second chances and blinding, sabotaging, or gen rushing. Like that's usually like the divisions of which you go up against, or a bully squad of some kind, right? So sure, it will make, though, like if it's really about just having fun and just doing whatever, then they would probably just run like whatever they feel like running, right? And it could be, maybe this person likes to heal stuff, so they'll just heal people. Maybe the other person likes to get chased, so they'll probably have a chase build on, and they won't really necessarily synergize in that way where everybody's running the same thing. But they're still, like, you know, at least to me, like a casual 4-man to me sounds like they're really just putting on whatever they want to put on as a person in a team, versus them communicating and trying to dedicate their builds to fulfilling a specific goal, which is to make the killers have a hard time. But that's just how I see it.
Supposed casual 4-man Swift is hitting the currency limit with their builds. That means they're stacking meta and strong items, which also means they're not truly casual, and the only fun they're actually looking for is bullying a killer with that unfair advantage. Again, that's why this is a self-report. Question 4. Don't you think this system will be too confusing for DBD players? No, I actually think that's absurd. Anyone who's ever encountered a character limit in the wild will know it's very simple to understand. The game will simply tell you when you've gone over the limit and by how much. I know people love to feign stupidity when it benefits them, and I truly believe that's the real.
I do agree with that. I don't entirely believe that every DBD player or every new DBD player is going into DBD brand spanking new to gaming. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. Now, is the game like completely different than a lot of games people have played before? Of course. But there's something like a point system like this. I've seen something like this in obviously Black Ops 2. We've seen that happen. I'm pretty sure like it kind of makes me think of RPGs as well, like when you have to kind of like carry limits. I like to think of like Fallout, where you're like you can't carry certain things, you know, things like that. It translates a little bit, you know, it's not that hard to understand. And I'm pretty sure that if you just have like a little text or a red bar or something like that saying, oh, like it's full, you know what I mean, out of points, you know, blah blah blah, then it'll be pretty easy to just do some simple addition and go, okay, well, this one plus this one, okay, and then you just look at the bar fill up. Not a problem if you want to make it a bar, like, you know, because that's pretty easy to see, like, okay, that's full, you know what I mean. Pretty simple stuff. I you know, give people more credit. Like, come on, man.
Primary issue here. Also, new players won't even be able to hit the limit because of their limited perk options, so they'll just be getting bonus blood points for using off-meta starter builds. Question 5. I bought the game, I bought those perks, it's my right to be able to use them how I want. Actually, it's not. This argument doesn't make any sense. You can only bring 4 perks into a match. That's called a limitation, and they already exist in the game.
Yo, that's a valid point, by the way. We all bought the game, we all bought the perks, and we can use them how we want, of course, but we can only bring 4 anyway. It's not like we could bring like 20 perks or anything like that, so there's still a limitation in that. The other limitation is also just lack of synergy with those perks, the other perks you have. Maybe you just have the perks you just bought probably don't work with the ones you already have, or whatever have you. So I don't know, I'm just saying.
Are you going to suddenly demand a refund because the devs don't allow you to bring every single perk into a match at the same time? What if one of those perks you bought gets nerfed? Everything has limitations and everything can change. Just because something is new does not mean you need to adopt a primitive mindset and throw stones at the spaceship, right? Question 6. Won't this hurt build variety? This is one I hear all the time, and the answer is no. This will dramatically increase build variety. There's no variety.
That is kind of true. I thought at first it might hurt the killer build variety from just first glance, but after kind of explaining it and kind of seeing that the objectively, like, the build variety does increase, because the fact that there is limitations even more so. I like to see it that you know, limitation breeds creativity, right? So like if you are limited in certain aspects, you kind of find ways to make those things work, right? You find ways to sort of shine through, and that's sort of what we're kind of seeing here with when it comes to a point system, is the fact that because there's a more limited point system, you can kind of create more unique builds, and maybe that can sort of add on to your playstyle as it is. And it does make sense. It does make sense. I do tend to run off meta a lot anyway. So if this were to come through, I think that as just a creator myself, I feel like I can deliver a lot of different unique sort of builds that really help out, I would say. And you know, another good example is like Red's Gaming Gears, who literally is dropping a video every day pretty much, like showing different unique builds to just try out and see if it's fun. So I mean, and it really obviously depends on the player. Obviously it really depends on what your style is, what you focus on when you play the game and stuff like that. but it does seem like a positive change, so
if players just bring the best builds every time. Also, again, the devs chasing perfect balance will continue to kill interesting build setups in pursuit of it, just like the recent haste and hinder change proves. So the currency system not only preserves variety, but encourages it at the same time. In addition, remember that all killers in all survivor group sizes come with different build allowances, meaning there is no one-size-fits-all solution like 4 gens slowdown or 4-second chances. There's a lot of variables at play now, and it's going to really force players to think outside the box when creating their builds. Question number 7. Won't this just end the same way where people find the best builds for each killer and survivor group size? Yes, but the outcome will be significantly different and way better. If you compare the old best nurse build to the new best nurse build, it's going to be night and day in terms of inherent advantage.
I kind of agree with Choy here as well. I have to say, I kind of agree with Choy here, and that was sort of what's so interesting about this conversation is the fact that you, by min-maxing within the limitation, will be objectively weaker than what we have right now, because with what we have right now is every slot can be filled with whatever you want it to fill and overall create one of the strongest possible builds humanly possible. But when you create limitation and you find the best within limitation, by the limitation on its own is creating a weaker build that overall will probably be better to go up against, probably will still be good, but won't be the strongest it possibly can be that we can create right now. And overall creates a more balanced game that at least can fit within limitation, which is what allows for more balance. Because if everybody's got that limit and then they try to thrive within it, then it's a lot better than a free-for-all, you know, Wild West sort of build kind of thing that we have nowadays, where everybody can bring whatever the heck they want, and it's like super difficult in a lot of games, especially because there's already a lot of RNG with maps anyway, so like the game can get tough, you know, the game can get difficult. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I'm gonna have the link for the original video in the description so you can watch the rest on your own, and let me know what you guys think of the video in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of the currency system, and just let me know what you guys think of how you would want to rank the killers and the sort of point system, because I was thinking like maybe don't really apply the point system too heavily on killers. I would say maybe give it like a good just give it a clean average, at least in my opinion. But I guess I guess it depends, because they would have to literally come out and specifically give these point systems to killers, so I don't know. But anyway, that being said, thank you guys for watching. Support with the links in the description. Follow on Twitch if you want to see me play Killer live, and join the Discord server so you can talk about DBD and other stuff with the rest of the community. And with that being said, thank you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.